All right. Okay. So let us begin.
Really?
Really?
Oh, yeah, that ganga tashi dele ganga kiwodo tane ganga yapondro shiwe yes.
So first of all, Tashidele, greetings to everybody. Geshe hopes that you're happy. He hopes all is going well.
Oh, ta nganzu ozu jani ta lekache de te page sel pan ngine soso ndo azogi yina. Oh, ta kiwodo yapomacha jeseshira yamares.
So actually, if the things that we are presenting in these classes, if you are able to kind of move your direction in the mind of the instructions that are being given, you'll see that actually there's not many reasons to not be happy, right? It provides a lot of instructions for happiness.
Oh, tere ta zo te tane ta nganzu neri chini rurishe de te zo te ngaro sola ane semse za chimbo jiwari de zomazo ya che de laga chiwares.
And so as we gather together, right, there are various reasons that we gather together. One of the reasons is that we understand that mind is the main determiner of happiness, and actually because of this, right, we want to be able to train or subdue our mind.
Ta te chi je noji ta lele chine te mozang roge ya te jese zo kawa tu yares. Nganzo lo ju du nyole.
Chugyu?
Chi je noji. Chu che chimbo jo ya ra mo
Gyun. Yeah. Listen.
Mutone ti se won roge ya jese ka res.
So what we want to do also is maintain continuity, right? We want our practice of the Dharma, our cultivation of the teachings, to be like a continuously flowing stream, like a continuum.
Ta te ka chimbo te nganzo sono to sa te nga se da ngaro so ta chimbo ze de ya te ko mutone roge yares.
And why do we want our practice to be something that is a stream or that is a continuity? Because that we call the I and that we call the self is also something that continues on and on, right? It is a continuum.
Yeah,
and as a byproduct of working in that way, then in terms of the happiness in this lifetime, in terms of securing good circumstances in future lifetimes, all of that will be taken care of when we practice in this way. So when we practice as a continuum, when we practice towards the ultimate goals, then the goals of happiness in this life and being reborn excellent goodness in the realms of celestial beings and humans in future lives will happen as a side effect of that. Huh? Yeah. And also keep in mind, if you're just worried about the happiness of this lifetime, and even if you're just worried about securing those a high status, or I said excellent goodness, that was wrong. So the high status of those future rebirths, those celestial and human rebirths in the future, actually you don't need to practice the Buddha Dharma particularly, right? You can secure the causes for that with other spiritual systems. So one of the reasons that we try to maintain this continuum in a relaxed way, right, we push ourselves, but we try to maintain this continuum in a relaxed way, is because we want to reach the goal of moksha, liberation.
Until
we achieve complete liberation from all of the problems and difficulties of samsara, we will not achieve a stable happiness or peace.
So
therefore it is really important that we practice for the long haul, right? That we maintain this continuum.
제 토론도 그래 타바 논내라 타바 소소 찌보게 타바 된 적은 뭐도 어느 로제 요조가 보게 타바 될라 다 타바 요쇼들 그것도
And so, of course, we know that it's not just enough to take care of ourselves to achieve moksha or liberation from our own suffering, but in fact, we want to reach the state of supreme liberation, full enlightenment, where not only do we achieve our own welfare, we can also work for the welfare of others.
어다 뭐지 릴라워도 말아왔어. 된다 나세야 될 타만만도. 나로서 다대 요게 강에 코와 될 타만도. 대이서 다 저세 쪼디 투야레스.
So there's a paradox here which might not necessarily be so easy to understand. That we call the self or the I, it has no end, right? There is no end to that. But that which we call samsara and its experience of difficulties and suffering, this is something that has an end.
예, 저세 쪼디레서 다대 요다 던지게 내서 집 걸어보게 세리바이나요 건데시 어서 질려서나 대시에 가리이나요 더니 비도 보지 묘가 다려야레스
진리다
세리바이 걸어서 이나요 던지게 내서 진 대시 통야지 쉬나
네.
더니 내서 가리이나 대시 자야시 따다 지금 거 얼마든지 요아 먹은 거 기체 요아레스.
Oh, right. So Geshe said that kare did this also donda kogi me so kare giro tanres.
네 세리바이나요 세리바이나 던지지 통토 따토 매아이자
kare 통.
시와시마도 던지게 지내서
Okay, did the laudorwa.
지시was 그래 다 가듯이 살 어느 다 가디나 조안도 또 가야 지금 거 요아레스.
kare giro tango.
단 내서 대시 자야
Su. Giro tangen su go.
세리바 걸어서 이나요 대시 자 토요 말스 따다
Ale.
가리는 얘는 내서 통토요 말was.
Sorry, I think Geshe sometimes expects me to fill the blanks in on things, but I need the whole explanation. Otherwise, I'll just translate what he said, and I think you guys will also be confused. So he has it in here, right? So Geshe is explaining that from the perspective of science, right, there are things that are not explainable by science or according to the scientific method.
어다 된다 세근 세세아도 못하는 거하고 내서 대자 마토나 시내서 강간 대시 따다 용토요 말이스.
And it's actually because science cannot explain how the mind, or that we call the self, is a continuum, right? Is something that goes on, right? So that's why they can't come to complete explanations of things, right? And this also has to do with the fact of accepting past and future lifetimes.
지대래. 이 비타는 알아서 치 간디지이나 내서 간디지이나 저도 제 뭐지라 때문에 쇼아레서 하던 데시에 할래야게 내서 지래 오 세력 될라 어떤 로토 매 제지가 디고서 그래서 하도 건조 누가 진 거.
And so another part where kind of the limitations of the scientific way of looking at things can be observed is when we talk about cause and effect, right? So in the Dharma, in the Buddhist teachings, we talk about an effect arising from the coming together of many different causes and conditions, right? But when we talk about science, from the purely materialistic kind of scientific perspective, they're always trying to connect one result or one effect to one cause.
다 데코로서 길래가 디토아데가 컨트롤 가디기나 강해래.
가르치와.
지질라 되네.
Oh, right. Right. And so this is actually a weakness in the scientific method. If you kind of press on this, why is it only from one cause that a result manifests, right? And that can lead to some shortcomings.
다 못어서 왔어. 다 된다 드니시. 야 나로서 레카 쪼데 세좀아서 하데 레카 쪼데레.
Yeah, so our main task here is this mental purification.
세 좀아서 다서 게야세나 만들 다 세기워지 그거라. 세기워지 게야들 소왕 엠바 파피야. 노도 엠바 파 좀아서 해들 레카 쪼지레.
And if we want to purify our mind, right? That is not an austere thing, actually. To purify our mind, we need to have a happy mind, actually. And in order to be able to have a happy mind, we need a method of subduing those difficult thoughts, those mental projections and so forth that disturb us.
어다 노도 녀바데 코 메누지 징아로서 셀 덤보 춘주지 레그라와스 다 테코 체르체르로서는 적기와 노지 가디 이나 셀 레레 마자네 드니키 강에서 요아레스.
So what we have to do is develop some introspection so that when this namtok, when this false projection or false thought arises, we are immediately able to counter it. Because what happens is when it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, then it kind of becomes actually a continuum in the mind, and it's more difficult to eradicate.
노도 녀바세제를 마도 노도를 다르지 저도를 이나면 노도 중앙이 뭐 요아레스.
So when we talk about these, when we use the word namtok, so this is why I say false thinking, because namtok, Geshe is explaining, namtok projection is not necessarily negative, right? They're mental projections that tend towards the wholesome. But usually when we speak of projection, it's something that is tending towards the unwholesome. So I say false projections or false thinking in that case.
근데 와서 어다 드리지자 당가로서 좀 돈보들은 노도도 도와는 거 받좀하소기 손비토네 다세 가사칼만로 하지 어다 레레지네 받데리.
So in order to subdue those minds, in order to subdue the mind from going all over the place, we're just going to take a moment to develop some inner peace to kind of settle and still the mind. So let's take a moment to do that.
예쿠라요 다세 마테네 사슬레레 지네 세 tumban라고 지네 레레데위 손바지.
So thinking that there is nothing pinpointable, just relax, thinking of the mind's emptiness. There's nothing findable.
세 녀마돈다와 녀마 찜바도 차소나 아니 녀마 사시 동아지 여반노지 세대오 든지요 손바지.
So think that in the sky, just as when the clouds are cleared away, the brightness of the sun is revealed. In the same way, when the discursive thoughts are cleared away, the clarity and emptiness of the mind is revealed.
세 동아 싸와 아니 든지가 다 가르스가 로지 쭈마 든지 야보질 바 다니 데이스.
So just observe now that these discursive thoughts have dropped off, the clarity of the mind, the purity of the mind, and its emptiness.
노도도 처음에 소가르 이나요다 냐추주노지 그렇죠 오늘도 대박 이나요 자주 뚜토 말아왔어 되노지요 선바지 세대.
And it may happen that some discursive thoughts, discursive feelings arise. Think that these are like minnows, like tiny fish darting around beneath the surface of a lake. Although they are moving, they do not disturb the water.
저 처음에봐 너도 처음에봐 저바셔와 너 시선이 다 세대 지와 레레 줘서 소모노.
From observing, establishing this stillness, difficult feelings that arise have been subdued. Discursive thoughts that arise have been subdued. and I can rest in the peaceful nature of the fundamental mind.
Tendri seya bote pa Geshe nila senshi yuzu pake deshi tempo chedo dena chamari sombe tone ta shombe se.
So, from the basis of the stillness of this fundamental mind, consider all sentient beings. Think how wonderful it would be if they had happiness and causes of happiness. Meditate on a universal love for beings.
Nikaga kange koiri kange uzole tane tana chumaru sombe tone niji chamo.
May they be separated not only from temporary problems and suffering, but from all problems and suffering. How wonderful it would be if they were free from that. Meditate on great compassion.
Tendri soma no jidot haya chita sowa chechi te tagayo soma chicha yete.
To be able to realize these wishes exactly as I have thought here, with single-pointed concentration and faith, I will pray to request blessings. So we'll go through the praise to the Buddha at a relatively quick pace, and we'll do the Heart Sutra and so forth as we've been doing for this series. Dönba chomdende dejin sheba dra chomba yandaba zobe sanje riba dan shazu denba dewa sheba jiden chemba chebu dewe kalo jorwa lana meba ladam minamgi dönba sanje chomdende pejawa shakya tubala chazelo chede kyabzu jiho dönba chomdende dejin sheba dra chomba Daba zobe sonje riba don shasu denba dewa sheba jiten chemba chebu dewe kalo juro lana meba ladon minamgi denba sonje chonden depe jawa shaja tubala chazelo chede kyabzu jiho denba chomden de deje sheba dra chomba yandaba zobe sonje riba don shasu denba Dewa sheba jiten chemba chebu dewe kalo jorwa lana meba ladon minamgi denba sonje chonden depe jawa shaja tubala chazelo chede kyabzu jiho. So we'll do the praise to the perfection of wisdom in Tibetan and then the Heart Sutra in English. Mazanje me shira parache maje minga namge ngowani sozo ranje yeshe cheyewa duzo jawe yomla chasel. I prostrate to the three noble, rare, sublime ones. Thus did I hear at one time. The Bhagavan was dwelling on Massive Vulture's mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Sharadvatiputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no eye element, and so on up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared, Tayata gate gate para samgate bodhi swaha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharadvatiputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. Prayer to the lion-faced Dakini. From the Holy Supreme, Kala Chube Nejo Damba Na Ngunche Zuju Ngawe Tuto Chen Juba Bola Maye Bujinji Nizun Kanjo Tsula Jazelo Agasamara Sashada
Shandara Samaraya Be Agasamara
So Geshe says, as you recite the mantra, imagine that all interferes, both seen and unseen, are completely dispelled from the place of practice.
Samaraya pe thayata gate gate para sangate bodhi soha Papa kunshu sungi togi chir dopar jochi mepar jochi shiva jochi drage bachi mitun pecho nyempa tamche shanti kuruye soha Geri dondra gyaju shewa da midu nebe kendan jawa da tumba deji bunzu zojo be dashi dejo dende dele jo.
To a short mandala offering.
So je beje je me do jo ra li je ni de gamba de songge jin de me de bo wa ye ro nanda je la je ba jo e dong guru ratna mendala kono ya da ya
Refuge in bodhicitta.
Sonje chedan soge chenam la jangche bardu dani gyalzu ji dagi cheje jibe sonan ji drola penje sanje dropa jo sonje chedan soge chenam la jangche bardu dani gyalzu ji dagi chenyen jibe sonan ji drola penje sanje dropa jo sonje chedan soge chenam la jangche bardu dani gyalzu ji dagi chenyen jibe sonan ji drola penje sanje dropa jo.
나오냐 다 동보 가디나 그노 가침보래 에세데아데 아니 조조지데다 간조 아니 가르세가 로제 요주 다 버게 사자 돈다와 할레베다 기보마도 된 강에체네 메시지를 또 그거 하레스.
So when we talk about establishing a vast motivation from the beginning, right, which is something that we frequently mention, Geshe said that we need to conceptualize this, right? We want to think about ourselves and others reaching a place where there is stable and lasting happiness.
다 내가 던지지요 아이자 내가 너 로그사 던지지요 아이자 다 텔로 베드 마노아지도 로 야슈지니 그거 하레스.
But to reach a state where there is that supreme and lasting happiness, right? We understand that there is a cause for that. The cause for it is being able to traverse a path which is completely unmistaken and being able to traverse a path that is vast and not limited.
다 테코 벤지세시 워렌도아스 베난다 알렌조 물리라 페샤 야슈지산 로그요나 로 마노아제도 로 야슈니.
It's the same in this world, right? When you want to reach like a worldly place, a worldly destination, which is seen as kind of like the best, the most enjoyable place, you need to make a lot of preparations, right, to have the resources to be able to travel there in a way that is unmistaken and to get there in the safest way possible.
다 던니 도사지 요메도 다게 알레카
Also, although Geshe said with the way the world is now, he's not sure where we could posit such a place existing, but if there was a place in the world that was like that, right, that is how we would try to reach it.
타발로 아마도 타바 야슈치는 도사지 야이자 델로 마노아제도로 야슈치 그야레스.
But of course, through the lens of the teachings, then there is this ideal destination, which is the state of moksha or liberation, and not just liberation from ourselves, but the supreme liberation for ourselves and others. In order to reach that, we need to traverse this path, which is both vast and unmistaken.
어때든지 시세도 대야보도와서 로제 요주 tetso garmato sosa chibosono to
Yeah, and so really think about that, right, in terms of how that connects with our motivation. The path that we're traversing, the place where we're trying to get, isn't to a destination where we just take care of our own well-being, right? It's to a destination where our own well-being is taken care of, but we also work for the welfare of others.
소소 집어서는 또 돈에 레사지요나 아직 그만해 가서 레차레스 내 매이자
Ale.
단타파도 소소 집어서는 돈에 레가 뭐뭐쇼 레가 제사라와스
Loso. And if you think about, let's take liberation out of it, but if you think about trying to reach a place just for our own benefit, really seeking our own advantage, that's what we've been doing since beginningless rebirths in samsara, right? And we can see what the destination is, where we have ended up.
다 다리 무set텔 레바야보 다 메일 다 세야보 대도 뇽돌 다 리야보 디야 이사 다 텐데프게 that tembo chi so ba ka chimbo.
So with this good human rebirth we have, right, with this intelligence and this human body which offer all of the facilities we need, really make that aspiration to reach that supreme destination.
Oh ya da tembo le chin ale ngo chu yi.
So we'll just begin this process with a brief meditation to relax the mind.
Za to le to chwa to kanga ka chimbo yi za da. Dan yu wan ja le cha nyom ba. De wi so ba chi.
So we want to have an upright position because we also want the channels, right, the chakras, we want the prana or the winds to be able to move through them upright. We want it to be unobstructed.
Yuwa ji cha nyom ba le lu yu da nga do ma ra de se zong ma yo bo yo so ma ra.
Think this brings the four elements into balance, right? It brings the malleability of the wind, and there's this peaceful equilibrium, right? I'm in a different state than before.
Lu chom ya ba kanga shal pa to yi lu ya ga kanga ti le ge yo so be tu ne da yu shu chimbo ta ma so.
So what Geshe would like you to do is to exhale deeply and inhale deeply for a total of 3 times, imagining that all of the stale winds, the stale energy or prana are exhaled, and as we breathe in, imagine all of the nourishing, powerful air is breathed in. So how we do this is we first breathe out deeply. We hold our breath for a brief moment, and then we inhale.
Se ro yu ya po de ta ni pa cha so ma chi ba le ka che to ba so yi so ba chi.
When we tap into that fundamental nature of the mind, then we tap into the basis to be able to accomplish all of the activities and trainings we set out to.
So so chi bo so ma yin ba. So so ge ni chi bo so ma yin ba. Ro ye do na ro ri chu ge sin ji yu zu za chen bo tu ka chen wo yin so ba chi.
And think that this purpose is something that goes beyond our own selfish consideration. It's not just for the sake of those who are close to us, those that we like either. It is something for both ourselves and others, all 6 types of beings within samsara or cyclic existence.
Rowa senche kanji ji na yo aro so ga shomba chenpo shi shi shonju ji se shi shi o da tan ji za da kanga ka chenpo za chenpo ni ne so ba ji.
Think every migrator, in other words, every single sentient being, it is on the basis of them that we can develop love. It is on the basis of them that we can develop bodhicitta. Therefore, there is not a single one that is insignificant. They are all kind and precious. Feel close to them.
yonzu kange do chawa yonzu deshi tembo chi do demba shi ta ngaro rongin ge yo so ba.
Think all these sentient beings, separating them from suffering, establishing them in happiness. This is my personal responsibility.
Di chet nga se de atata suji koro de ba jo de koro ga to ba no ji suji ma to ba we am du on de cha to ba ji so ba ji.
And think that even the Bhagavan Buddha, it was not until he reached that state of Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, complete and perfect enlightenment, that he was able to do this. Therefore, the self, I must actualize the same enlightenment. To be able to study and practice a path that can lead to this state for myself and others is something extremely fortunate.
So
this was a brief overview of our motivation. And so think about the implications of this, right? Because every single being is the basis for us being able to realize love, is the basis for us being able to realize bodhicitta. There's not a single one that we can set aside or disregard, right? This is very important. So ideally, what does this mean? I don't like him or her, right? That sort of attitude of picking out the people that we don't like, we abandon that, right?
So
and of course, to reach the state of complete and perfect Buddhahood is not something that is at all easy. We know we need to traverse those 5 paths.
So
the 5 paths and the 10 bhumis, or grounds, these are things that are important for us to be familiar with.
The
6 paramitas or perfections. And if you kind of expand those, it becomes 10 paramitas or perfections. These are all things, right, that one would want to look up and learn, right? These are good things to know.
And
in the stages of the path, it talks about these 6 paramitas, these perfections, being how we purify our own continuum, and the 4 ways of gathering disciples as the way we can purify ripen the continuum of others. So these basic points, right, these fundamental lists establish a map of the teachings in your mind, and it is on that basis that you can proceed in your cultivation.
Yeah.
So then, as we are in the chapter of the Bodhisattvacaryāvatāra, where it discusses the confession of negativities, we need to think what do we need to learn in this regard? So specifically, the holy beings talk about the practice of confession and purification connected with these four opponent powers. And out of these four opponent powers, it is the power of complete eradication, nampa sunjinpe top, the power of complete eradication, which is the most important.
된다 넘버 선지비도서나. 아니 다들 예바시바되는 예바시바되 소래.
And so when we talk about the power of complete eradication, Geshe said, this is a mind of sincere regret. So you see, I just asked Geshe if I could share something with you. For those of you who are trying to learn the four opponent powers, often it's given as like these series of R's. So we just say regret. We don't say the power of complete eradication. I encourage you to learn the phrase as the power of complete eradication, because as you'll see from Geshe's explanation, this actually becomes important.
더 단단 가지고 예보 또 저거네 디파쇼 세근도 왔어. 디파쇼 선 가르세가르서 빼나. 예.
Yeah.
빼나 가지고 졸라치게노라.
Yeah, yeah.
두짜로 두자 뭐뭐 지요나. 폴린다고 지 도도지.
Yeah.
대마쇼 세요. 카쇼 돈 좀마서.
So Geshe said the word confession, shak in Tibetan, because we're talking about the confession of sins or negativity here. Confession in Tibetan, this word has the idea of kind of like laying something bare. So Geshe said if you thought of your negativities as rocks or pebbles that you're keeping hidden in a bag, the practice of confession is like turning that bag over and shaking all those rocks and pebbles out so they become visible.
다 된다 메코는 가지고 나자 샤치서 노지레스. 나자 두자지요나. 예치렌 좀마서 카샤니 좀마서 그래도.
We can think of it as a little bit like a surgery, right? If you have some sort of serious infection or growth within your body, right? The first step is that the surgeon has to make an incision into your body so that he or she can see where the thing is in order to be able to remove it.
어다 때래 아그서와 이나요 당 어떤 저기도 된다 노바 선지비 또 어때 초아 보면 요멜라 다니라 또지 여본도도 마로 소디도.
So this mind of regret, which we call the power of complete eradication, if this is not in place in a stable way, then the practice of purification will not be successful. So Geshe says that that is where he believes we are in terms of the text of the Bodhisattvacaryāvatāra. Dani digpa machang barwa ngundu gumpar guduchi. Yeah. Dotsarebe. Ale dene ide mirum chidakti. Ale tamche borte che gopar.
Ale ide muri chadon
ngachen ide mirum chidakti romos ngachana. So Geshe and I are having a bit of a debate as to where we ended. I think that we ended on verse 33. Geshe thinks we ended on verse 34. Does anyone happen to remember? Does anyone want to tell us? If not, if I'm wrong, we get another nice explanation on verse 33. Yeah. So Geshe said how he's going to resolve this. We're going to read verse 33 and 34 together. Yeah.
Dana dipa majo nge dangwa jeta chi chatan dele nge tawa ni tsi sha de so ite mari chdo anda chido mashi made bi na to mana kunji chu lobo chela ite me
So verses 31 and 32 together. And all the grave wrongs done by me, so thoroughly evil and polluted, but an abundance of faults I openly declare to the guides of the world. But I may well perish before my evils have been purified. So yeah, we did talk about this. Geshe is remembering verse 32. I remember this also. We talked about if we don't purify before death, then they kawadut. Not a lapshot.
So that young
Nga kasang kechi chisong la nga so kawaii me hako so denden hako sa song la so.
Hako so sting ni to se so se
Yeah, Geshe said that you didn't mark where we were, and I said, yes, but that's why I asked you last night. Do you remember where we left off? And then he said he knew. He said, yes, I do. So he's finding it for me. It'll just take a moment. My apologies. All right. Okay, so Geshe believes we are at verse 40. Kare? Oh, right. So Geshe said the discussion up to this point has been about how kind of our lifespan is something that is sort of set and it cannot be sort of extended. So I think we may have been before 40, but anyways, we're starting at 40. While I am lying in bed, although surrounded by my friends and relatives, the feeling of life being severed will be experienced by me alone. And so Geshe wants to do the first half of the next verse, 41. When seized by the messengers of death, what benefit will friends and relatives afford?
ngaroso tamandro inikala tamandro inikala ta soso dipa shoyono keso chimbo yarmato dipa masho ando ayina ta yayega ta matu sadu smage sroba yoba yinayo di petu mares.
So at the time of death, what's being said here, what's going to benefit us is the virtue and also the purification of negativities that we have been able to complete. Even those ones near and dear to us who surround us, they are not going to be able to do so much to help us.
This one, ota ani gewa khishiyo ota dipa pashun chawachi ta tani lo debo lele chen ro ya yarmato yes mugisam karamagi kazema jata mombo korai deyo wa yinayo petomodis.
So we need to prepare for this moment, right? Because at the time of death, it's the virtue that we've secured and it's the purification that we've completed that is going to make sure that the transition to a good place is peaceful. In the absence of those two, no matter if there's 100 people sort of lamenting at our deathbed, none of them is going to be able to do much to help us. If we're able to, at the time of death, bring forth a powerful, virtuous mind, that is something that we can be sure will definitely bring benefit. Yes, so then it is very important to confess our negativities and to do so with sincere regret. My merit alone shall protect me then, but upon that I have never relied. Second half of 41. Yeah, so we know that what's going to protect us is the merit that we have accumulated. But also, if we think about that, we haven't really accumulated so much merit. So this isn't the case of somebody who hasn't accumulated much that is positive, right? In the case of somebody who has, they're going to have a very different experience from the example that's given here. Verse 42. O protectors, I, so unconcerned, unaware of such terror as this, accumulated a great deal of evil for the sake of this transient life. Yeah. So this is kind of the example of one who sort of was not aware was not mindful of the negativities that they accumulated, and then suddenly, when death is upon them, then they become aware of it, and there is some fear.
This one, what I need to
So this is trying to drive the point home, right? That our lifespan is something impermanent, and the time of death is uncertain. So what we need to do now is to be aware of this and purify negativities and accumulate merit accordingly.
This one, what did it, huh? She was yellow, Jebisa, Teriti Bago, Teriti Bago, Danger Day. Only Kako, Mizan, Niela so, Nali Jet and Jonona, Shijiponia, Jinji, Shatu Jinji, Zuchi, Jichen, Neji, Tejaba, Radonyoto, Major Gay.
So Geshe has read 43 and 44 together. Petrified is the person today being led to a torture chamber, with dry mouth and dreadful sunken eyes. His entire appearance is transfigured. What need to mention the tremendous despair when stricken with the disease of great panic, being clasped by the physical forms of the frightful messengers of death.
Tangaroso, Tangilatere, and a depart passion, Gawachi dog yate, Penangaroso. Tandoji ina yo.
Yeah.
Ni je korota page ta ta mai na chibarawa. Mai na tandoji na. So so se garawa. Hakoso.
Yeah.
So so se sal tin do yo na.
Yeah.
Kite kanga jipa do kange do kanga so what you de was.
So this is giving sort of an idea of this kind of being stricken by this panic. And so Geshe is saying, like, what this panic can be, we can imagine that, for example, a human being being led to the site of their execution. Or we can imagine an animal who is being led to the site of their slaughter. And at that time, right, one is stricken with despair and panic.
So ta ba cha ja ba ina tandiji ka si ina se ya was. Ta ina na sel kange. And so
think if that was you, the kind of mental difficulty you were experiencing, or think of the facial expressions of the humans and animals that are facing that fate. And so when it talks about these messengers of death, these are kind of beings who are sort of taking care of the one, like, sorry, konso lega karere chita chidagi ponya denso
ta chidog bonje te jing aroso megon zoya do ta te jil kange te kete jir was.
So I'm asking, sorry, oops. So I'm asking about who are these messengers of death? These are kind of like the servants of the Lord of Death who are giving kind of difficulties during the time. So Geshe is just explaining that their physical kind of forms are something quite frightful. Kuji.
Pesha.
Loso.
You know la. And Sunjil Yaketene. The dig deep kange take a sensitivity. Jacarla ten shumare, Sarsujicho dendigalete. Kangalo dipesela ten shumare.
Okay, so Geshe is referring to a text by Lama Tsongkhapa, Kujigi Drawar, which is called the Four Bodies. So there is the root text of the Four Bodies and a commentary of the Four Bodies by Lama Tsongkhapa. And in those texts, it relates a question that was put to the Buddha, where the Buddha was saying, like, these messengers or minions of the Lord of Death, from what cause do they arise? And the Buddha answered saying they arise from no other cause than negative karma. That was the answer.
That meant Ramada Yari, no Sawa, Lakachikin Ramada Yari, Tejikanga Lolota, Hakosarawa, Karala, the
So these frightful messengers of death, the minions that are giving beings problems in the lower realms and so forth, all of these kind of apparitions are arising due to negative karma.
그저 세나타 간조 간다 루지 바도 당저 와서는 그저 길래가 말해서 아마 저가 봤잖아.
Ale,
그저
kuji.
그저 셈세하대.
Kunji.
그저 노시.
Kuji mare, kunji. Okay, so... Okay, Tibetan speakers, did you hear kuji? Because that's what I was hearing. Geshe was saying kunji, so I have to correct the name of that text from Lama Tsongkhapa. It's his text on the kunji namshe. So you would have learned this, I think, with Khenpo Pema last time. He talked about the alaya vijnana consciousness, the mind basis of all, or the storehouse consciousness. So it is in Lama Tsongkhapa's text on the mind basis of all that you see this conversation, this question to the Buddha related. Kunji. Kunji. Kunji namshi. So Geshe said that nominally, the alaya vijnana, mind basis of all consciousness, is something that Lama Tsongkhapa critiques rather than accepts. Yinengakla, kilengirebe. So although you find it mentioned in various tantras, although you find it mentioned in the Majjhimika Sautantrika view, Lama Tsongkhapa says that this is not something that is plausible in the Prasangika presentation. So according to Lama Tsongkhapa's view, it's only the Chittamantran school who are able to accept the alaya vijnana, the mind basis of all, or storehouse consciousness, completely. And so then there becomes a tsunji. So Lama Tsongkhapa explains it's because of not being able to posit the basis of designation for the I or the self that the Chittamantrans, the mind only, need to establish this alaya vijnana or storehouse consciousness. That is the reason they posit it according to Lama Tsongkhapa. Yeah. Yeah. So what they're saying is, we talk about the five consciousnesses, and then we talk about the mental consciousness, and then it comes about yigi namshe nangla dakse di yore sulagare tegyore ranjuba. And the Majjhimika Sautantrikas say that we would say that the I or the self, its basis of designation is the mental consciousness, right? The Chittamantrans, they take it a step further and say that it is this alaya vijnana or storehouse consciousness. And so Geshe said that although we're not holding these views, please don't dismiss them willy-nilly, because there are great scholars of the Sautantrikas, great scholars of the Chittamantrans, who after a lot of investigation and deep thought posited these philosophies. So all of these warnings also indicate a possibility that if we prepare for the time of death, it is an experience that can be embraced without fear. Verse number 45. Who can afford me real protection from this great horror? With terrified, bulging eyes agape, I shall search the four quarters for refuge. And we're also going to read 46. So there is something left out in the translation of verse 46. but seeing no refuge there should read, but seeing no refuge in those four quarters. So I'm going to read it like that. But seeing no refuge in those four quarters, I shall become enveloped in gloom. If there should be no protection there, then what shall I be able to do?
다스 두세이나 딜레딜레 지가 샤루치나 손이 타 치워서는 미 파티션 놓쳐서 따그레스. 드리질레베가라.
Kare, nganso shia dan tanya ko yan tes shina sa ko.
강에 좀
Nganso ku kortes shegire.
shegirawa.
Yeah.
어시와시 맨네서 키키레가 요아이자.
Yeah.
단년서 뭐뭐 요아이자 다 shegirawas.
So at this time, it's where the death of the person is kind of imminent. It has become completely clear. And sort of, in Dharma societies, we're accepting past and future lifetimes. So at this time, right, the people surrounding the person are going to look concerned. It's a worrisome time.
다가 디딜레 따가서 호트가 샤치와 이는 샤로예요, 말레스.
But if at that time of imminent death, suddenly you decide to search for a refuge, you won't be able to find that refuge just in that finger snap of time.
다 샹이네 단단히 sembo 요비가네 템보 요비가네라 소소가 다 샹로 요보지 어느 게와 요보죠 근데 제가 이는 까 디디드 멜로 라테마 노지코로 알루야이자
알레트 kucheti.
오테요아이자 아니 제가 샤로서 왔다나요 고지시 친구야레스.
In fact, the time to seek that refuge, the time to seek that protection in virtue, in refuge, in the three jewels, is now. If we seek those now, while we are still of sound body and mind, then at the time of death, it's like we've put that little hook, it's that little hole where the hook can fit in and protect us.
pena tani lainare da tani mainare tani rijiде shewa shamang yasolo page tandola shea ngis koro tonela
Yeah.
tani telanji pa shene sonjela sha sonela shandin ni patagaronge tandola machine hala shea lojisi wo yares.
So there are many sort of historical references from the lifetime of the Buddha, where, for example, a person who possessed some clairvoyance would see, in my next life I'll be reborn as an animal. They would ask the Buddha, how can I protect myself from this? And the Buddha would give them instruction in refuge, and that would be enough to protect them from that fate.
다 개조서 돈자와 존지 세번 돈자와 요토나 오케서 드리우 요아레스.
Kunchuso Danja Wodang?
존지 세번 돈자와 요와 토나 무센델라.
If we can, while we are of sound mind, establish a relationship with the three jewels, establish a relationship with the bodhisattvas, then that refuge, that protection, will be available to us at the time of death.
So in
this way, up to this point in the text, we have covered the power of complete eradication, sometimes translated as the power of regret. So these teachings, right, this difficult portion of the text, it's not something that is being shared to give you mental difficulty, to cause you fear. It is something that is offered in the hope of establishing you firmly on the path that is both vast and unmistaken. That is the motivation with which it is shared. Yeah. So, it's also talking about the impermanence of things. And don't forget that in the Buddha's teachings, his dispensation, the first teaching that he revealed was connected with impermanence, and the final teaching at his parinirvana was connected with impermanence. So if we think about these basis teachings, they are something that can help us protect our life and health now and secure a road, a path to improvement in the future.
Yeah. 다리 뒤따다 뒤토그마 샬로는 남마담마페 본담마다 가세 강에테야 버티토야 말했어.
Because on this path of dharma, it's not like your working life where you have the boss who is kind of like goading you on to move forward and go in this direction and go in that direction, right? The path of dharma is something that is cultivated internally. So we need to develop that internal guide that is going to lead us, that is going to pull us along the path.
다 개와 여보는 거요는 이니면지 가디나 체체가 말했다. 소소 따다 세계에 될야 개와 여보들야 그런 건 거요나 가디나 체체가.
So if we are already sort of well situated in a life where we are continuously accumulating virtue, where we are continuously developing our positive mental qualities, then we don't need to meditate on death and impermanence as a way to kind of pull ourselves along that path, right? Because we're already doing that. And so now, from here in the text, we are talking about the power of the basis.
대 자원 로잉게 로와샤비 대zemba 또 진지바 까셀라 대리니니 샤스처 대 투스 처비지 코인지바 세와도 존재선비 쏠라요 대정용도 샤스처.
Verses 47 and 48. Therefore I now seek refuge in the Buddhas who protect the world, who strive to shelter all that lives and with great strength eradicate all fear. Likewise, I purely seek refuge in the Dharma they have realized, that clears away the fears of cyclic existence, and also in the assembly of Bodhisattvas. So, just really reaffirming the fact that that which has power to provide refuge from samsara and the fear of samsara in a complete way, it is the three jewels.
아니 샤드비 다로 임비찬에 겐달을 샤스도야. 샤니 임비찬에 다 지켜줄 다 샤스도.
And as we go for refuge, you remember that the Buddha is the teacher or the propounder of the path. The Sangha or the spiritual community are the helpers who help us traverse the path. And the Dharma, the teachings, are the actual refuge.
라자조 가르레에서는 센젤 채워 보여야 될 때 간데서 간디어 버렸어. 이네잖아.
The Chökunjukti.
And
so when we talk about the precepts or the training of refuge, the essential one is abandoning harming any being, right? So the practice of ahimsa or non-violence, that is the essence.
Dagi lindem bawaja tuji sheva mati sherezenge telayo nyota ngari go dembe.
So Geshe said that the next verses from 49 onwards take the form of a prayer. I, trembling with fear, offer myself to Samantabhadra, to Manju Ghosha also I make a gift of my body, to the protector Avalokiteshvara, who infallibly acts with compassion, I utter a mournful cry. Please protect this evil doer.
Oda shoji semba se shoseni isi je sen yovas. Oda teji kangal nesa tendiji aisa. Oda kanga ta so lito karina kanga kontrol yambugi.
So ale deni ngabshinge chitang ale. Shloka ji yore chasang nyamdu chasang logimbe.
Tata tandi tindi sos.
Ale, yeah, so Geshe said we read the first of these two verses. It's a total of 4 verses. And what they are doing, mainly they are calling out a going for refuge to the 8 principal bodhisattvas. Yeah. So another thing to remember is when we speak about the 8 bodhisattvas, right? These are what we call divine aspect bodhisattvas. So they are beings who took the appearance of a bodhisattva for a particular purpose, but we believe that ultimately they are actually Buddhas. So we shall leave at verse number 50 our discussion of the Bodhisattvacaryāvatāra for now.
다 당길라 바노지 샤니 땡안조 가르레서 치케주데 샤니레 잘라디와스.
So, just to go back to one thing that was briefly mentioned, we talked about the three jewels of refuge and the Dharma being the actual refuge.
다 치케주는 날라 조 자와자 자본다고 찌데. 아니 다 야돈이 또 비시라데레디요.
And so we could say that the king of the actual refuge is the wisdom realizing emptiness.
다 데이자 시라 님보노네 다조 데데 게시시가 아이다 띵고도 그래스.
And because the Heart Sutra has that as its main topic, we are going to turn to our discussion of the Heart Sutra. Oh, sawa shirabji shloka di logirero. Ya konsul apni. Ah, sawa shirabji logirero.
Oh, 봐. 야야.
Tambo di me. Tenjin jo. Ah,
도모만도위.
ah.
다시라 님보노라 다 소소셀 뉴즈야리라고 요바스 년롱이 전주기 샤와서레스.
So then, to keep sort of the structure of the Heart Sutra in our mind in an easy way, remember the three basic outlines: the preliminaries, the actual sutra, and the conclusion.
당년도 때 뭐보여 빨리 쪼라버데 터는 리진이요. 와스 토모이 리지 토모마이 리지세는 데니트 쪼레스.
And within the preliminaries, remember we talked about two preambles. We talked about the common preamble and the uncommon preamble.
깔 뭐보여 빨리 리진이보다 지스노이 가스 그레스.
Jisunaweka. Oh, right. And so then, sorry. Yeah. So then when Jesu nang wake up karere?
다들 리진이데.
All right. So the two preambles, when we talk about the three kinds of transmitted speech of a Buddha, they are the speech given, mandated by future pronouncement.
그래서 다 되니면서 다니 샤리버가 다 니지 때를 다니 저와도 레니. 좋아?
Yeah.
샤리버가 좋아?
Yeah.
때를 다니 샤레지글레. 때라 손지가 아니 지스여론제서 서레스.
So we've talked about the preliminaries. Now within the actual sutra. The actual sutra consists of three parts: a question from Shariputra, an answer from Avalokiteshvara, and like a statement, a certification from Buddha Shakyamuni.
다 되니면서 다 저와틀레 샤리버도 저는 샤레지가 저와틀레 때라 신질로 비카세 그래.
And so the interaction of question and answers between Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara, out of the three kinds of transmitted speech, this is considered speech transmitted by blessing. Speech transmitted by blessing.
신질로 때라요 뭐야 빨리 투 띵엔저가 또 신질로 봐서 그래.
And we said that in terms of the speech transmitted by blessing, we talked about three types of these: transmitted by blessing of body, by blessing of holy speech, by blessing of holy mind. Tukra. Here it is transmitted by blessing of holy mind.
되지스마 다 레텔라 터네 쇼지스마 온토걸 놀로뇨레가 바치 레텔라
Le?
쇼지스마 온토걸 놀뇨레 셰토지 야 쇼지스마 온토 오모노토 니요
Opo nimpa. Dulpo down nimpa. Right. Tambodi dulpo.
tom보가 놀뇨레가 바치 지워레스
Right.
아니 온보가 놀뇨레가 바치 디지아레스.
And within the answer that is given to the question, the first, which is kind of a longer part of the sutra, this is the answer aimed at the disciples of limited faculties, and the next part of the answer, which is much briefer, is aimed at the disciples of sharp faculties.
그래서 다 온보토보 때라 다 추존이니까서 돈이뇨레 셰도 추존이니까 솔로도 졸로
Right. Yeah.
아니 뇨레시도지 아니 토로게니까라 뇨레시도지
Yeah.
골로게니까라 다 골로시도 뇨레시도
Yeah.
골로 타마게 뇨레시도
Yeah.
아니 몰로로 근데 생각하고지.
So then, in terms of the presentation for those disciples of limited faculties, it kind of is divided into sections according to the paths. So the first one is how to practice while on the paths of accumulation and preparation. The next one is how to progress on the path of seeing. The next one is how to progress on the path of the path of meditation. And this is divided into two parts: the initial path of meditation and the advanced path of meditation. And finally, we have the path of no more learning.
This one, oh, that the golotas lady.
And so where we are in our discussion at this moment, we are on a discussion through the lens of the path of meditation.
On this one, that golonica, Yetenrosa, that
And so last time in our discussion, we talked about the practice according to the path of meditation, mainly from the side of the object, and now we are going to go to the side of the object possessor. I think the English word subject is more evocative than object possessor, but I can use whichever one you tell me to. Maybe in the Q&A you tell me. So, okay, I'm going to ask now. So, do you guys prefer me to say object possessor or subject? People don't care? All right. I'm going to say subject then. Okay. Yeah. So we are on the bottom of, okay, subject is good. So we are on the bottom of page 11 in the prayers for the teachings, where it says, Geshe me topa me ma topa yam me do. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. We've talked a lot up to this point about emptiness, and we've related that discussion of emptiness to the Four Noble Truths. Yeah. And now it is saying that even that exalted wisdom, right, that pristine exalted wisdom is also is also empty. And it says no attainment. So what do we mean when we say no attainment? We mean that on the path of meditation, part of that is achieving certain things, certain positive mental qualities. Those also lack inherent existence.
Yeah.
Ale matopa yamedo sena miloplam ti dapachi.
Ya malolo sena
sange gi go pandu miloplam lam na.
Malolo la ya mado sunji sa yete kare ina yo.
Yeah.
Golog nikala matopa rawas.
Yeah. Yep. And also no non-attainment. That means that the state of the Buddha, which has not yet been achieved on the path of meditation. So ma tobia sangigi go pangdi yang tompare. So no non-attainment, speaking about, right, that achievement of complete and perfect Buddhahood, which has not yet been reached on the path of meditation, is also empty of inherent or true existence.
This one, oh, that teacher tell Kanga Lolo, and Runji to be Tumbare Mato, tell
yeah. So, of course, we say that they are empty of inherent existence, right? But they still exist nominally. And so it's that point which Lama Tsongkhapa really parses, that point which is really difficult. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Rangjingi Tompare yine. Yes, right. So, in a capsule, what Lama Tsongkhapa asserts here is that the attainments or the positive mental qualities that are achieved along these 5 paths are empty of natural existence, while at the same time they are dependent arisings. He's laughing.
Listen.
At me. Listen. So we are now going to turn to what I told you about, this verse from Nagarjuna's Mula Madhyamika Karaka. I'm sorry, it's a long word. The fundamental wisdom of the middle way. Geshe said, just say root of wisdom. So Lama Tsongkhapa asserts, right, this is really the crux of his presentation, that if we are able to proceed seeing that emptiness and dependent arising are not in contradiction, on the basis of that, the unmistaken path will be revealed. And we can't say that Lama Tsongkhapa's assertion has no valid source, and that's why Geshe is giving you this quote from the Wisdom of the Middle Way. So the first part of the verse, and so this is from the chapter on the Four Noble Truths. Whatever is dependently arisen, that is explained to be emptiness. That, being a dependent designation, is itself the middle way. So, dependent arising and emptiness are like the two sides of a hand that we hold out in front of us. Empty is a dependent arising. Dependent arisings are emptiness. We cannot posit one without positing the other. When we can see these two together, the emptiness and the dependent arising, then we are on a path that is unmistaken. We have truly discerned the middle way. Of course, when we talk about meditative equipoise upon emptiness, whether in that state, that yogic state of meditative equipoise upon emptiness, one can see or perceive dependent arising, that itself is a whole other discussion. So please keep this verse in your mind and think about it again and again. It's really important. So the next verse, something that is not dependently arisen, such a thing does not exist. Therefore, a non-empty thing does not exist.
Yes,
And so this particular point, Geshe said, it's useful for you to know that the great spiritual traditions of Tibet kind of understand this differently. Yes, Rebecca, I will send you a link to order this book. Yes. But Geshe said, just understand that each lineage of Dharma transmission has its own particular qualities. And just understand it like that, in an open-minded way.
So
Geshe said that his idea is that although these presentations within the various lineage streams are different, for the practitioner who reaches realization, the difference is not something so significant. And he plans to explain to you why this is the case at a later juncture. Papa nyamje yashi. Ale samlotang ya. Yeah. So some explanations argue that in the Arya's meditative equipoise upon emptiness, in that state, all thoughts of dependent arising even must be abandoned. 텐중상로탕의 방거랬던.
다 강가 바꿔 가리나 바꿔 가래.
You have to stop any thought from arising.
다 라마 zonka petitul 강가 바꿔야 말 로지지 좀 바꿔야래. 잘라봐. 다 된다를 파시 나본다고 레 뭐야레스.
So what Lama Tsongkhapa says is that actually in that equipoise, what one has to cease is the thought of anything being inherently existent, is the thought of anything naturally existent. So Geshe said the wording is slightly different and has a slightly different kind of conception to it, but on the experience level, he thinks this could be quite similar.
야보자 다 갈래 용거를 가서 야보자 다이비가를 니네 가서 저저서 그 여와 매반다고 지된데 사야지 된데 용거를 해서.
가래요 매바.
지지전도 근데 제자야 등 자야 된다.
As we cultivate our own experience in meditation, what Geshe posits you will find is that these differences, these slight differences in explanation, on the level of experience, they are non-different.
다 이나요 지근데 자거리 제바치 못된대요.
But the words that are used and how the words that are used are understood in these explanations, yes, these are different. We have to acknowledge this. So, you're going to grapple with this and come to your own way of how to go forward, right? So that is up to you.
다시 또 뭐야? 그냥 릴라고 시작하이나? 건조가 선나 지지 연다이나? 강가파 막거나?
Yeah.
하고 살아. 이 간디제 통사지요나? 너도 시사지요소나?
Yeah.
아니 대저도 콘도세야지 거래.
So what scholars of these other traditions may argue is that if we don't stop any thought from arising while we are in this state of equipoise, the realization that is the culmination of this equipoise cannot be reached, because if there are other objects that are arising, it is possible that anger, attachment, or other afflictions are also experienced in relation to those objects.
라마존가 바시는 대 말레스. 예코로 통화 zonji. 자도 셰세야도 노도 셰세야데 따다 말레스. 델 버게 라보지도 아니라 아니 자도 셰야데 거래 마도.
What Lama Tsongkhapa argues is this: just merely perceiving or seeing that object while in a state of equipoise is not necessarily going to give rise to affliction. Why? Because it's not the object itself that gives rise to the affliction. It is our exaggerated perception of the object, or our mistaken perception of the object, that gives rise to the delusion.
대요조 버겐 저기 주사지 요아래 소노도네 로지 잡아 요아래 소노도 비토네더니 자도세야지 거래 마도 예때 통화 zon지 자도네 거세야데 말해.
Just merely seeing the object is not going to be enough to start the unfolding of this attachment, anger, or whatever. It is with the arising of that object, the mind that thinks there is some sort of findable essence to it, there is some sort of pinpointable thing that I can locate, some sort of inherent existence. It is that reification of the object that is going to lead to the arising of the affliction.
뚱바니 그 따와 디가 로지지 특별 하버따야 때 좀마 좋도소나. 아니 이 가를 따와 이나요. 그 자도 용거 말해.
If we understand emptiness and we through this are able to eradicate the misapprehension that there is some findable inherently existent essence to the object, once that is in place, there is no question, there's no way that attachment or aversion are going to arise in relationship to a particular object. So this point of discussion is where you will find quite different explanations within the great lineage systems.
This what ngaroso tumani se cha chimbo tsgya azuja gya de tandang ni sha tere chodu kangi tawazoki unji tripi sons tere de sons mewazoki de toni ga tawati mato tazoki yo amares.
So this is actually why and how we posit the value of this realization of emptiness. Because once the realization of emptiness is achieved, that sort of thinking that there is going to be some findable, inherent, or natural existence of objects is eradicated. Once that apprehension of inherent existence is eradicated, then no matter what object appears to our consciousness, it will not be able to give rise to attachment or aversion and so forth.
Oh, tintisma da kazo nganzo shirani bono kale kasho towa. Golo chichini zibi zingola demba je yo me. Ngude yo me se chichi yara. Kale kasho tere. Da tawangine.
Yeah. The tuores jawo namla yes. No se tijo de festisas.
Me tati de ti lete ta tere es pe ha tenda te twa yung yara es.
Okay. Chiwa kandes chikres.
Ya?
Gomlam gi chuni sikpe siknöla kunzup dempa kangyimpa.
Tate chido machi as so ni mu tu.
Ale.
Demba je te yo. Golo chichini zibi zingola me shirani mono te yung yara wa sila.
Oh. So then in regards to the explanation on the Four Noble Truths, it says that during the path of meditation, the one who is in the perception of the one who is seeing ultimate reality through the path of meditation, relative truth does not exist. I'm going to offer up an alternate translation for that part, saying relative truth does not exist. I would translate it as relative truth is not present.
Tawana te me sona anin gude te yo golo chichini zibi zingo me tala kara was tendra kumudus.
So if we take this to kind of its full fruition, that the perception of one who sees ultimate reality through the path of meditation, relative truth, does not exist. Sorry, dene gomlam kare?
Gude.
Gokten yang me pares.
Golo chichini zibi zingo me tala kara was tendra kumudus. Gude demba je me sona. Ya?
Gokten? Yes.
Gude yo me ro rawas.
Yes, Gokten mena dene.
Gude men rego mar gude tuni rawas.
But if we take this statement at face value, we would also have to say that true cessations do not exist. And if we say true cessations do not exist, that makes no sense, right? Because true cessations are empty. Gokten denso tongnires. Yeah, so then it wouldn't make sense to say that. Kyoru drogi duskale kaksha. Yeah, so there's an answer to this problem. And this answer is something that we want to think about as we understand the Heart Sutra. The answer is that we are not trying to cease true cessations, or we're not trying to kind of disprove true cessations.
Tawana sekok gude sa chitel yani tenjawa kanis tu garasana gude korogo tuni tuje yimbate golo chichini sibizingol meza
korangi gaksha dirwa
tayo gaksha
gaksha mala
tuje
tongshe. Right, so when we say that the true cessation does not exist or is not present, we have to understand we are not talking about true cessations as a whole. We are specifically talking about their tongji, their basis of being empty. It is their basis of being empty that does not exist. So a true cessation is emptiness. But within true cessations, there is still a basis for being empty. And it is that basis for being empty which does not exist. This is really, yes, difficult point. He said Kedrup doesn't really understand it. I freely admit that, but I did do my best to give it to you guys, and hopefully you guys are smarter than I am and will understand it. Geshe was very kind to send me some WhatsApp messages, but what can I say? I still didn't understand it even after that. So Geshe is also emphasizing this point because His Holiness the Dalai Lama really kind of focuses on this as one of the most difficult points within the Heart Sutra, actually. His Holiness the Dalai Lama says that when we talk about the emptiness of the 12 links of dependent arising and even most of the Four Noble Truths, it's actually like not a problem, but when we come to true cessations, right, then it's a little bit difficult. So we want to meditate on the Heart Sutra and its meaning, right? But if we're somebody who really wants to do that properly, what we want to do is kind of contemplate the more difficult parts of the Heart Sutra as a way of uncovering its meaning. And so in our next class, which will be 2 weeks from now, because next week is the White Tara initiation, we're going to talk about still on the path of meditation, but by the time one has reached the 10th bhumi, so the advanced part of the path of meditation, how does one practice emptiness? So our discussion will pick up there in 2 weeks. So Geshe said that he had planned to cover all of this really quickly, but we didn't go as quickly as he would have wanted. That's because of me. I slowed him down a little, so my apologies. So let us do the dedications. Afterwards, if you need to get on with your day, please do. If you'd like to hang out for questions, please feel free.
Changjo semjo rinpoche maje panam chejur chi chewa nyamba mepa yang gone gondo bewar sho tongni tawa rinpoche maje panam chejur chi chewa nyamba mepa yang Gone gondo bewar sho Jambel pao jikdar kyamba tong Kundu zambo deyon deje de Deda kungi Jesu dalo che Gewa dida tangche radongo Dusun shebe Gawa tangche ge Ngawa gangla Chodo ngawa de Dagi gewe Tsawa dikun kyon Zambo cheji Rada ngawa gi Gangri rawe kowe shinkam de Pendan dewa malu jongwe ne Chenri ziwan tenze jazo ye Shape sute bado tengyo chi
소소 개와시피다 디틀라데네 소방년바도 조항년바칸데 제요마이나의 강가파션이 강계질라 솜바솜보시도야지.
Through the virtues that we have accumulated, may all of those beings possessed by evil thoughts and compelled into evil actions, may those evil thoughts be replaced with a mind of loving kindness and with activities that benefit. May all 6 types of beings within samsara be able to be possessed of happy mind and healthy body in order to be able to reach freedom. So we'll pause there. So Geshe said, just sort of related to this last difficult point, there's two terms that we need to think about in terms of gomlam, Gokden, sorry, in terms of true cessations. Tongji dang keji, the basis for being empty of true cessations, the basis for distinctions of true cessations, dagji, gawe dagasa dakrwa. Dao gaga ga, ale gagjagi ga. And the object of negation of true cessations. So all of those things you need to think about. Gagja dang Gagji dang Gagja. Oh, so in other schools, the basis of negation and the object of negation is posited as being the same thing. Gagja dang Gagji gawe jaki kuji chipares. Okay. Yeah. Lama Tsongkhapa says that when we talk about the basis of negation and the object of negation, there is some differentiation which is required.
This way.
I think so. So are there any questions? Make the first one gentle on me, okay? I'm kidding. Go ahead, that was a joke. Go ahead.
So I have a question.
Yes, Dave, go ahead.
Yes, what comes to mind is the follow-through on that last statement was what distinguishes the object of negation and the basis of negation.
Yes. Gagja dang Gagji nila kepar kandes res.
Pena nga ruji jime jalana.
Yeah.
Hakusarwa.
Yeah.
Nga te Gagja res.
Gagji.
Yeah. Nga ruji ji tuba te Gagja res.
Ale. Geshe was making fun of me. That's not very nice. So, you guys heard that sarcasm, right? Even though it was in Tibetan. He says, I'm pretending to suddenly understand. No, I did finally understand something. So it was a good question, Dave. It was a very good question. So when we talk about the inherent existence of the I, or the inherent existence of the self, the I or the self is the basis of negation. The inherent existence of that I or self is the object of negation. Gagji. All phenomena, in fact, can be posited as bases of negation. The inherent existence of all phenomena can be posited as objects of negation.
This one?
Yeah. And Lama Tsongkhapa says if we kind of differentiate these correctly, right, what we're going to do is negate inherent existence, right? We are not going to negate the relative existence of phenomena. If everything becomes an object of negation, then we wouldn't need to worry about karma, because there would be no accumulator of karma and there would be no consequences of karma, right? It would undermine a lot of fundamental principles. There'd be no object of attainment, Buddhas. there would be no sentient beings for whom we practice. There'd be a lot of problems as a consequence of thinking like that. So between this gagji, the basis of negation, and the gagja, the object of negation, we really need to differentiate those.
Can one say that there are multiple bases of negation? The multiple there's only, compared to all the objects. Okay, now I'm getting confused. Compared to all the bases, there's so many different bases, but there's only one object of negation, which is inherent existence.
Okay, yeah. Didapo samlo tangna roa dene gagji che tamshe gagji yensang gagji chang mepa. Gagja rangjingi drupa matok metsang gagja chik matok mendu samlo tangna digires. Correct. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Dave. Yes, thank you for that question. I think that hopefully that was clarified some things. It certainly did for me. And it's because there is only that one object of negation that when we realize the emptiness of one phenomenon, that realization can be easily carried across to all phenomena. That is the reason.
So when
you see the emptiness of the I, of the self, then for example, if we turned our attention to the flower and wanted to perceive its emptiness, this would unfold quite naturally because of what Dave stated, right?
Did
that cover your question, Dave?
Yep, thank you.
I see a lot of hands. If I'm not mistaken, I think B was first, and then maybe Sam, and then Yulita. So B, do you want to go ahead?
Yulita is first.
Oh, was it? Okay, thank you for being honest about that. Yeah, go ahead, Yulita.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Hi there.
My question is mathematical. If it is possible to come back to quite precise depiction of processing of mind.
Of the what of mind?
Process of mind. How
the process of mind. Could we say continuum?
Continuum. This this moment by moment by moment by moment. Mind.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And there is a moment of realization, whatever. Yeah. For example, mind, egoistic mind,
right.
And boom, wow, emptiness, got it, got a big realization. Right. So, and now my question is, because in Buddhism, this is a very precise depiction of mind, and now I complicate question, this model of mind, which is with 52
mental factors. Mental factors. Yeah.
And in this model, I use more Abhidhamma term sanya, which is perception or memory or something which know or see. It is possible to talk about realization of emptiness by this model. Yeah.
Is it possible? Okay, let me just say what I understood. So, because I think I want to be able to get a precise answer for you, Yulita. So we're talking about mind as a continuum, and it's momentary. So the mind is something that's continuing from moment to moment to moment. So we have a person who is continuing mind from moment to moment to moment, and then there's this like realization of emptiness. They understand it, and then beyond that, that continuum still goes on, right? And so when we talk about this realization of emptiness, can we speak about this realization of emptiness as part of this continuum, but in tandem with the Abhidharma teachings on mind and mental factors. Is that your question?
Yeah, it's for example, exactly. Because here we use this terminology basis for being empty. But
Right.
what would be in terms of 52? Which
of these
can
mental
we point-
factors? Yes, I got you.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, I think I got your question. Nganso sem seria di roa sem gi gun res. Sem gi gun senda nganso ke chikma sem drogi duas roa nguma karcha dila tene karcha jela di yongires. Tene nganso chugun di yores roa. Tene sem duschene drone dene tutsu du chikla tombani togires roa. Tombani hako tsason roa di chikyores. Dene semgi gun mutune drogiyores. Korangi triwa di nganso semgi gun kechishegyores tongni gi tokpa kechishegyores. Ine nganso zu samlo tangna dene nganso semshung ngabshunge ni naola kechishegyre dua. Dene tombani togya di samlo tangna semchun ngabshunge ni naola kawa drogiyores. Jempala drogiyores, kawala drogiyores. Semso re tombani di.
Tumbani tosuna.
Yeah.
Tukisete se
Yeah.
Tumbani tukisete wa.
So Geshe wants to ask you, Yulita, are you asking which of these 52 mental factors is actually realizing emptiness? Is that part of what you're wondering?
Yes, it's just yes. We use this model 52.
Yeah. Dire.
And after there is a moment of realization, and then the person goes out of it's happy because he got it.
Yeah.
But it's continual life, right?
Yeah.
So this 52 mental factors continue to work.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's two parts to your question. Okay, now I see. So I'll ask the second part first, because that's the easier question. Are these 52 mental factors kind of continuing in the same way subsequent to realization of emptiness? Semshun ngachunge ni den so tongni tope jela mutune drogirebes. Triwa tambo dires.
Marmarta kangadun rogo marwas. Gi serjin dondo yungres. Gi serji konyur kalimen rogo.
So the answer to the second part of the question is, do these 52 mental factors continue after the realization of emptiness? This needs to be clarified, because I don't know if it's going to be the same in the Theravada tradition, but in our presentation of the 52 mental factors, we divide into virtuous, non-virtuous, and neutral. So what Geshe is saying is that after the realization of emptiness, those non-virtuous mental factors will be greatly diminished and will eventually cease. So that's the answer to the second part of your question. So after the realization of emptiness, any afflicted state of mind no longer has much fuel with which to continue burning. So they will slowly fade out and cease. But but many virtuous mental factors within this list of 52, they not only continue, but become stronger and stronger subsequent to this realization of emptiness. So, in terms of the mind that's actually realizing emptiness, often we talk about it as the wisdom realizing emptiness, sherab dang, jempa dang. Often we talk about it as a samadhi, a concentration, realizing emptiness. But we can also talk about it as a drempa, a mindfulness of emptiness. And Yulita, I think this is where you'll find it links up with the Theravada Abhidharma. It would be this factor of mindfulness.
A perception, Sanya, also.
Shepa? Shepa? Yes, because that's omnipresent, right? Because that's omnipresent with all the others. Yes. Yeah, because they're and all of these are consciousness also, right? Important to remember that. Yeah. Yeah.
시바레디 가레스.
So the main mind, as well as all of the mental factors within this presentation, they are consciousnesses. So that's also important to remember.
So in this mind, this moment of realization, it is something which realizes this sanya or this mindfulness, wisdom. It is something. It's not totally. Is this no empty enters in empty or realize empty?
So something that is non-empty enters into emptiness, but everything's empty in that it lacks inherent existence, right? But I'll say this to Geshe and see what he says, Yulita. Sorry. Ko Jempa seria di ko tongi mayimpa ginetso chik Jempa di. Tongi mayimpa ginetso Jempa di tongi togires. Di samlo tangna digirebes.
메메타 테 담르 와스 단다디 예타 레 돈비칼라
Yeah.
템바리 담르 요아르 투니 하마고 키 템바고 요아르 와스
Yeah.
칼레 튼디 템바치
Yeah.
템바 차선도고 마르 와스
Yeah.
튼디 템바치 투니 템비 템발로 주레스.
Yeah. So for example, with mindfulness, we also have to think about this as a continuum. So you'll have all of those previous moments of mindfulness that we're not able to discern this object of wisdom realizing emptiness. Then you will have a mindfulness that unfolds this realization of emptiness, right? So it's not like one cancels out the other.
But it doesn't mean that there in this moment is cessation of this. It's this confusing of this using of word cessation. In Theravada, it is very precise term.
Oh, you mean true? You're thinking about true cessations.
Because it's cessation, true cessation. Yeah,
Cessation.
Emptiness.
So what does cessation mean to you? Maybe if you tell me that, I can get a good answer for you.
It's exactly the moment realization is cessation of all these 52 factors.
Tek megi nang lola roa gokden di lebdu dene a semchung ngabshu ngeni me drogi duas. Ting anso dang menjao rebesa.
맨도 여자에 소근도 당아 지는 이 말고 벤데 맨도 말해.
Geshe doesn't think this is the case. So this may be presented differently in Theravada and Mahayana. Re dire karinsena tomba chomden de roa jangchub topdu dene nyangen le de pejela me drogi res dichi dabochi tua.
Yeah.
So I was saying to Geshe, so I spent a little bit of time in Thailand, and one thing that my teacher said to me was that when the Buddha went through parinirvāna, it was like a candle being blown out. So the continuum of consciousness was cut. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama has critiqued this understanding in his teachings. So I don't think this is the way it's understood in Mahayana. Geshe said, yes, that example is really good. Like that's the difference, right? Cessation means everything stops. But that's not how we understand it in our tradition.
So
Geshe said there is an exception. There is one sort of subgroup within the Chittamantran mind-only school who are holding this. But most Mahayana schools are not. However, two of the Buddhist philosophical schools, the Vaibhasikas and the Sautantrika, the Great Exposition and Sutra schools, which are Shravakayana schools, right? They are holding this, but we do not.
Actually, this is 52 cessation. The word is actually cessation of all. But there is this perception which, after this process, realized that there was perception. So it is something, not a complete annihilation of everything, but it's this few, something happens, it realizes after that, in this moment it was something which perceived, it was conscious of realization. So it is not some totally empty in emptiness.
Yes, no, you're absolutely right. Like there has to be something that thinks I realized emptiness. Is this what you're saying?
Exactly.
Yeah, ko chena dende me drogi omares karinsena nga tongni top song shepa dapo chiko gire do chatsangwa me drona di legyo ma
야
resa.
대노 가서 되가래 따서 뭐 나요 멘토 그랬더니 고사 멘토 같은 게 토끼 문도 와서 가서 계제 모시기.
So Geshe said that yes, and in fact on the debating ground, the monks take this point even further and say that if everything was cut off, then there would be nobody realizing emptiness, right? There would be no self that realizes emptiness. And then like kind of what are we doing here? So they kind of posit this as an absurd consequence of that philosophical kind of line of thought.
야 깔래
even
자자
Buddha-
토저
Again.
깔래 자자 토자한테 토근되었다. 토자 토를 걸어 매서는 계좌 쳐서.
So we work so hard to reach this object of attainment, and in the end, that object of attainment is just nothing, just everything stopping. That doesn't sit comfortably for a lot of folks.
But even Buddha seems to be processed because it will be future Buddha.
Yeah. Dene nganso yang maumbe gi sange yona di yang don dagmendua karin sana dine kokna dene maumba legio maresa.
야.
Yes, correct. Thank you so much. Yeah.
이렇게 되냐?
Alo. So he wants to say one more thing.
다 빼나 세 걸어 빼나 캐나다 자자는 캐나다 간다고 드레스 유거로
Canada. Okay.
세대.
Yeah.
다 세중아 정 와지에 간가 레구 소선다고 지레스 레구
Kalun.
갈레도
Los.
세대 갈레도 드니 요하라와
So Geshe said that in terms of mind and mental factors, just to give an easy example of this, you can think of the mind as being like a government, right? So we can think of, like, for example, Geshe said the Canadian government is the mind, and then all of the ministers and the civil servants and the prime minister's office that carry out the activities of the government, these are like the mental factors.
세주 간가 로로 자야테 레카게 차니 줘바레스 코로코로 레카만다게 차
So the mental factors are designated on the basis of their function. In other words, the work that they do.
세 코로 사시리파 도이 차니레 마도 야 코로다
Main mind, we can't do that because main mind's not designated on the basis of its function, but rather its characteristic, which is clear and knowing.
But knowing is a function.
Ine chale yoresa.
여도 야레스 이나 요테 레카 만다
We're not saying it doesn't have a function. We're just saying it's not designated on the basis of its function.
레카 여도 야레스 코로 예조 질 따위 차니 줘바레
Yes, of course, because it's this main mind that has to hold a principal object, right? When we talk about meditation. for
된다 야도 만다와 지야레 된데 뭐레
But yes, Geshe said there could be a lot more discussion about that as well. It's not fixed. Yeah. So Geshe said there is lots of room for discussion. So B, you've been waiting patiently. So do you want to go ahead with your question?
I have lots of questions, but I'll try to be brief. First of all, earlier in the teaching, you were saying on the path of seeing, realizing emptiness, then relative truth do not exist. That's the translation. But you prefer that it does not present.
Yeah.
I don't like either one of them.
You don't like either one of those. Okay.
It would be more accurate to say that relative truth do not appear.
Okay, yeah, I'll put these to Geshe and see what he says. Okay.
Yeah,
Now,
because
so,
they are not- okay, yeah.
yeah, let me do it in bits, B. Otherwise, if you say everything from the beginning, I might get lost. So but you're welcome. After I finish, please come back with the next question. Totally welcome. But let's do this one first. Nansa di gomlam gi chuni sikpe siknola kunzop dempa kangyang mepachi krwa. Nansa di kandesla gre kangyang mepas nga yomares lapswa ine ko chena kunzop gi nangwadi yomares nangwadi kunzop gi nangwadi shargi yomares labna di yagadusa.
대야게 said 너도 그거 너 샤게 말해 대우리 대 매세한테 대세기 요래 된다
So when we say that it is not existing, you're absolutely right, B. What that means is that is not appearing to the mind. It is not dawning to the mind. So that's correct, in fact.
나도 tel라 짐을 매세 도와지 윤조치 도선을 tel레자 그랬어
So in fact, when you're kind of trying to parse this statement That's one of the modes of explaining it, is by bringing in this word appearance or appears.
Zingol yona korol noa shagares. Korol
Because if it does exist, or in my words, if it is present, then it has to be appearing, right? So yes, that's correct. It's a good way to say it, in fact, he says.
Yeah, in the meditative equipoise on emptiness, all the relative truths are still there. They still exist. But they just do not appear to that mind because what appeared to that mind at that time is emptiness.
Yes. Then nganso tompa ni nyamshak yope kaplola roa kunzop gidempa denso mepa mares na korongso ginangwa shargi omares. Karin sele semdi ko so tongi go cordeyeres. Absolutely correct. And the reason that it happens like this is because emptiness is profound, and so it's like taking all the energy.
Is that the reason, or I thought it's always been said that only Buddha is able to see ultimate truth and relative truth simultaneously?
Then kunzop dempa dang dundam dempa duchik tongen sange matok yomares. Actually, there are bodhisattvas who can see the two together on the level of pramana, gonda. Jolam. Yeah. So on the path of preparation, there are bodhisattvas who can see both relative and ultimate truth together. Yeah. But they cannot realize them directly in the same moment. So this ngusu, this Tibetan word ngusu, this direct, is really important. Yeah. So there is a conceptual thought of them, right? Yeah. Yeah. So so emptiness as a conceptual thought or a pramana, this can be held in the mind at the same moment as a relative truth. But when we talk about the direct realization of emptiness, meditative equipoise on the direct realization of emptiness, at that moment, yes, relative objects are not appearing to the mind.
So Geshe
said that it's a bit counterintuitive, right? Because it's like you would think the more advanced we get, the more things we can see, but it's actually when you move beyond those conceptual kind of realizations of relative and ultimate truth and come to that direct realization of emptiness, that's when you can only focus on that and not have those relative objects appearing. So this is the difference between a conceptual mind realizing something and a direct realization of something.
Okay. Actually, I have a question on that, but that's going to take me away from my main question.
Yeah, no, say your main question.
The main question might tying into actually the basis of emptiness and the object of negation of emptiness.
Mm-hmm.
Basis of negation and object of negation. This is the first time I heard of these two different terms. So going back to the path of meditation or path of seeing, direct realization of emptiness, so what they are realizing is the emptiness of the object of negation, and what does not appear is the basis of negation.
Okay, so on the path of seeing, with this direct realization of emptiness, what they are realizing is the object of negation, and emptiness. What is the object of the emptiness, of the object of negation, and what is not appearing is the bases of negation. Did I get that right, B?
Yes.
Okay. Dene nganso gomjagen tongpa ni ngosu tokpe kaplolaya rua konso gagja digi tompa semla yores yine gagjila semla shargiomares di labna digides. Correct. That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So using the example of inherent assistant of I being the basis and inherent assistant being the object of negation. So on the path of meditation, so in what does not appear is the mere I.
Dene nanso dag seria di korla dagi tompani di gomja pe kaplola. Was it path of seeing or path of meditation be? Sorry.
During meditative equipoise, during direct realization.
Okay, yeah. Now,
So
so the
basis that does not appear is that mere I.
yeah. Then it nanso gagja di semla shagiris dagi tompani gomja pe kaplola ngosu tokpa di lepe kaplola nanso gagja gi tompani Yongiyores ine gagji seria di dag seria di semla shagyomares. Sena gagji dagre doa. Correct.
Yes, get a go mares. Penangazo tante pia tandaina yo. Tangazo tangalijana medu tejan pijan to us.
Yeah.
The more medu tell too many roji to make Chevashica, the more medu to us.
Yeah. So let's just see how this unfolds. So say that we're looking at those flowers, right? And we want to determine the emptiness of the inherent existence of those flowers. So as we go through the analytical meditation steps of that, the flowers are appearing to the mind.
That tell you, Chevashi, and Gazi, Queroji, but the Siwash, Tisabo Shabikala, Semet Tumboto Bicala,
Yeah.
Medu Metar, Medu Yuto.
But at that moment that the lack of inherent existence, we're able to have that clear in our mind and determine that as an object. At the moment that we have the pramana of that lack of inherent existence of the flower, the physical appearance of the flower will set from our mind. It's actually no longer dawning in the mind. And when we talk about, he said you may have heard that when people are meditating on emptiness, then they think, oh, the I, the self, isn't here anymore, and they experience some fear. It's related to that setting of the appearance, right?
Is that the path of preparation or path of seeing?
Di jolam res, tonglam res, di kadiris. At the moment the pramana, the valid cognition is achieved, even if one has not entered the paths, one can have this experience. It can be from that first moment of developing a valid pramana, a valid cognition of emptiness, actually.
You mentioned
So anybody can experience that beat, is what Geshe was saying. So at the first moment that pramana, that valid cognition of emptiness is achieved, it can be that basis of emptiness, in other words, the object with which you were kind of using to realize its emptiness, the appearance of that is going to subside.
Okay. Oftentimes there is the term ultimate truth, relative truth, then ultimate reality, relative reality.
Yeah.
Now, when we say ultimate reality and relative reality, it sounds like we are talking about two reality. But there is really just one reality, the relative reality, and the ultimate reality is really just the ultimate mode of abidance of the relative reality.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
You just want me to check if this is correct with Geshe?
If you say it's correct, that's good enough for me.
No. I think you're right, but no, we should Geshe as the last word goes to Geshe. So we'll check. So ko sena nganso dundam dempa dang kunzup dempa lagiris. Nganso chuni kunzup chuni dang kunzup dempa lagiris. Right? Denis di sena ngunenesu di ni dapo chagire duas ine ngunenesu samlo tangna roa ngunenesu chatsama kunzup dempa di res roa ine dundab dempa ngunenesu gi keche dapo chik samlo tangna digirebes
me kuzu dempa dong me tedo dempa do chini jibara was
yeah
me mara ma tenda jibara wa
yeah dundam dempa So reality, Geshe said, so B, you may be thinking of another so there's so many English terms that are translated as reality. One of them is chini. So I gave chini to Geshe to ask your question, and Geshe said that chini in the sense of reality means ultimate truth, actually. So that I may not be thinking of the right reality that you're referring to, which is why you're getting these answers. But Geshe is saying reality is ultimate truth, actually.
야, 매도 돈이 있으나 매도 체질하고 저는 그랬어.
Yeah, but you're right in that when you talk about a flower's emptiness, right? The emptiness is a characteristic of that flower. So from that perspective, what you're saying makes sense.
나이 돈만이 있으나 나이 체질하고 지랬어.
When we talk about the emptiness of the I or the emptiness of the self, right? That is a characteristic of the self, that is empty of inherent
나
existence.
체질. 나이 돈만이 체질.
Ah,
나 체질. 체질.
yeah, Geshe. Yeah. So you're right. In that way, you're right.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that because now I'm talking about a lot of other lineages. They talk as if when you reach Buddhahood, there's only ultimate reality left.
Sangye,
So maybe
Sangye,
No.
who said that?
I gotta say.
Sangye Tobdu Dene. So we have we have a lot of hands showing all of a sudden, and I'm happy to stay late. That's no problem, but I don't know who to get to first. So
Can I just ask something really
yes,
quickly?
of course.
It might help with B's question.
Okay.
Can you ask Geshe-la, when the Dalai Lama is talking to you, or you're in the presence of the Dalai Lama, or the Dalai Lama, say, is at a conference, and then the Dalai Lama goes to meditate, right? What is going on? Is the Dalai Lama, I thought that the Dalai Lama was seeing ultimate and relative truth and reality when he was looking at, say, me or anyone else, and that in meditation he can actually see the future and the past. I mean, that's what I was always taught in Dharamsala. B, this is, I hope, relevant to your question. I don't know if it is, but I was always taught that he could see both when he was looking at anyone. So that maybe that won't help you, B, but that's the way I just thought I would interject because that's the way I was always taught it. I don't know if that's true. Does that make any sense?
No, I understand your question, Rebecca. Yep.
Okay.
Nganso Jao Rinpoche, Dalai Lama Seria Di, Rua Ko Chena, Ko Mi Su Tongna, Rua Nganso Kunzup Dempe Netsu Dang, Dundam Dempe Netsu, Nigala Tongire Dua, Dene Mi Dang Kamu Nampe Kapula, Mi Jeria Denso Raya, Chawa Kare Sogiyana, Ko Kunzup Dempa Dang, Dundam Dempa Niga Tongires. Dene Kandes Lagre, Gom Jape Kapula, Gom Jape Nyamshak Shuyagi, Nampa Dampa Chikyores. Nyamshak di Kaplolaya, Rua, Dene di Dempa Nidin so Nyam Nutone, Dene Ngama Dang, Maumba Dang, Dusum Chatsam, Nyamdu Tongyagi Nesu Dabochik Yongires. Kodi Dabochik Kosonsa.
Me tate, ya te mores. Pena sonji seina yo.
Yeah.
sonji le chaton yo yishi to jito yishi ya mare. Ibares.
So it depends how we're seeing His Holiness, right? So if we're seeing His Holiness as a Buddha, then actually the Buddha is correct, perceiving relative and ultimate truth in one moment all the time. But for a Buddha, there's no difference between how things are being perceived when they're in meditative equipoise and how things are being perceived when they're out of meditative equipoise. It's always going to carry through.
Ina yo sonji yo so nyomba janela ko ka ke jamashi tenik tisen duas o da te nuji nomba namana te ya.
So, but His Holiness, also the Buddha, there are times when they appear to be in meditation, maybe their eyes are closed and they're not speaking. So it appears that there's difference between them engaging in their activities and being in meditative equipoise. But Geshe said this is more like an instructive, how do we say this? Manifesting the aspect. That's the word. Manifesting the aspect of kind of being in meditation, although it's not really necessary.
Da tenda senjeli na nyoja yishi to jito yishi ni mandawa chimbores.
But for those who are not Buddhas, for those who are sentient beings, there's going to be a difference in what they are experiencing while in meditative equipoise and while out of meditative
다
equipoise.
소질이 여야 말은 뇽뇽도 좀 저기 그랬다.
But for a Buddha, this experience is going to be consistent all the time in meditative equipoise or out of meditative
콜은 내바시 그
equipoise.
바지 지금 강간 종화소 차에서 뒤에랬다.
And the reason that the experience is the same is that they have defeated all obstacles, stains, and imprints that could lead to any difference between their experience of things in equipoise and outside of it.
Okay. Good.
Did that answer you, Rebecca?
Yes.
Okay,
thank you.
great. So I think Annie was next, and then Dave. Annie, go ahead.
Hi,
Sorry.
No worries. It's all good. Go ahead, Annie.
my question after listening to all this discussion is that when you have a sort of a conceptual gotcha moment that I got it, how do you bring that into practice in your everyday life so that it doesn't just remain as something abstract in your mind, but that you can actually use it when you're interacting with other people?
So you mean and so that gotcha moment, Annie, is that are you talking about a pramana here, a valid cognition, or are you just talking about something more general,
just something more general that, I understood that form is empty and emptiness is form.
Yeah.
How do I bring that understanding into something that can be more practically used in my everyday life?
Yeah. Yes, gotcha. Okay. Su tombani suso samro tangna roa dene nganso tsema parjana tombani suksos dites hako sonski tsorwa chikyona ngadi apo kotsares so hakoya di mitsinangla kandes pesha tangores matujen hakoya dinso da nganso mitse ketang yewa dapo chikyores nganso mitsinangla kandes pesha tangores.
매매다 멋진 놀 대대 뭐로 왔어. 아니 수도 tumbago 세리다 손지 선바슬로 하자와이나.
Yeah.
다 할게 좀 뭐지 할 못하는 건데와.
Yeah.
다 거야 대 배제 간에서 또 가르세나. 소소 보게 노다 테베 가르세라.
Yes.
디세 따도 될다 배제 또 도바 그야.
So the time to use it, so for example, say we've understood something about form is emptiness. So when do we use this understanding? We use this understanding when we're confronted with a difficult moment or person. We go back to thinking about that understanding.
하고서 어다 땡데 로지 보게 로지 매비가 매나 용 로지 티피게 소서 질려요 하레스 갈때 간지스래도 따지잖아. 땡데 배도 하레스.
Think, okay, I'm angry at this person, but they don't possess any inherent existence. Yet through the lens of my anger, it seems like they really exist. Why is that?
노도 두자시 몸보시와 옛날에 저와 두자 몸벌레 비깔이 옛날에 단저그 주사진 뉴도 뭐도 대배제도 해서.
And when I go into this and accept this at face value, that person I'm mad with, who I dislike, exists in that way, this leads to all other sorts of projections, obsessive thoughts, and negative feelings. But what if I could take my understanding of emptiness and apply it to how that person is appearing to me right now?
하고서 다 뒤에 되는 벽에 타던 저 두자 노도 두자 단데 저 군좌보 군좌보 가리나요. 어떤 논서도 면도가 말해 되네. 다 그렇게 슈슈는 넣어야.
So if we keep it in our toolbox for those difficult moments when we experience a lot of anger, when we experience a lot of attachment, and we habituate ourselves to bringing in that understanding and trying to apply it to what we are perceiving, that can be a way to bring it into daily life.
ngene beje to kila modu tsewa shwa ina petu shus sekiu mombo yare nguyo modu tsewa shwa kala
Yeah.
ane ta te ndi maso so tumbani ge towa ge to ne ta chesane ta tende za petu
So
mombo shus
for example, say you have a falling out with someone, or someone says something that really upsets you and you get upset. right? You can also use it by thinking like, gosh, if only I had applied my understanding of emptiness in that situation, like how it could be different, right? So like we can also apply emptiness in a way of reflecting on our past mistaken interactions with people.
양인의 저는 배도 요거라 왔어. 어쩌니라 요 말에 에서 동반이가 저와티가 로 노아 강가를 건네봐 또 도요 된다.
Yeah, again.
로 노아 강가.
Yeah.
그걸 긴내봐 시도요.
So like this idea that there's some sort of findable, pinpointable essence or inherent existence if I seek it, right? That's going to lead to a mistaken apprehension of all appearances. And that understanding, that knowledge, is something we can use for all sorts of situations.
So
he said probably too long of an answer, but
No, that was great. I think that's really helpful because sometimes when we're discussing concepts of emptiness, it's really easy to get into the abstraction of it and not really know how to apply it into everyday life. But it's actually so critical to your relationships to keep that in mind rather than throwing it out the door. So
통반이 내서 sabmo 카디네 케체시나 like the apoyo resi ninganso mitsinang la pesha tang matumna tene kesang tes shorjogire diwas
mimi teto kadinang yesu jagati was chodo control korope trapo ka pecha tugare se kadina yesu jagati.
So that's why Geshe, he said he really tries to push that the best moments to apply these understandings. See you later, Brigitte. So the best moment to apply these understandings is through that lens of aversion or anger, through that lens of attachment. That's when it can really be brought to life.
Yes.
But generally, Geshe said, everything that we share, no matter how kind of abstract it can seem, is actually something that can be used. But it's very good also to ask questions that can come back to the application of the concept that we've discussed, right?
thank you very much. That was very helpful.
Yes, you're welcome. So I think, Carol, you're next.
I just want to say a big thank you to Geshe Sonam for providing such an amazing map of this very extraordinary journey. Thank you.
Semgi subtracting samodisone tujenang shugiyasa. Yeah. Yes, he understood. He's appreciative.
I do love my job.
So Geshe said we're gonna give the last question to Dave. So Dave, take your opportunity now.
So this is actually Marta who's asking.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Marta Gichiware-san.
Yeah.
All right. So Marta's question is going to be our last one today. Okay.
I believe this is in connection to Brigitte's question.
Right.
So in this study, there is a point to understand that in the end, there is no one who has to understand anything.
Dene Tompani nesu chatson yapo hakwana dene kangsak ngadi hakogures sukang yomares di sanglo tangna digirebes ngadi di hakogures di chikyang mandus kanisena yuldang yuchen tompa yinsang ngami di hakogures nesu chikyang mandus direbesa
Mara tedo marwas senjik te nese mombo hakogare tangang yayon roki ya.
Not quite, because the relative truth means that after this realization, there is still the person that's going to have to try to benefit sentient beings and engage in all those activities. So it's not that the person who wants to understand something, that understanding makes them disappear, but it's that the obstacles to you being able to realize things and to help sentient beings are cleared away through this realization. In fact, it's said that through this realization, the other of these 6 paramitas or perfections are strengthened, and the Bodhisattva becomes even more engaged, even more connected than before.
아고서래. 오다 대지로 초한테 가른도야도 다는 바체 강간 유는도야 다 길러갈 때인데.
Their sort of feeling for sentient beings and their wish to engage in activities becomes even more powerful, and the obstacles to that engagement are dissipated.
아니 소소요 도만이는 뭐 잡에 깔아도 좋았더니 요 말했어.
But while the Bodhisattva is in meditative equipoise upon emptiness, of course, that's not part of the picture, right? They're focused on that. Yeah, but outside of meditative equipoise, all of these kind of activities and things are happening. So the realization of ultimate truth, emptiness, does not mean that relative truth ceases to function. Through the realization of the ultimate, it's not that the relative is defeated, it's that it's understood. All right, so if it's cool, everybody, I think so we are beyond our time, so maybe we leave the discussion there. So just as a reminder, next Sunday will be the White Tara Empowerment, which you can watch live only. But the subsequent Sunday, we will have again an installment of this class. So I really encourage you to bring your questions if you have any outstanding ones to that.
Yes, please, thank you. And for those who are local to our area, please consider volunteering for this event. We need your help. So yes. The Bodhisattva crew has openings.
Yes, relative truth. We're going to be functioning in relative truth. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.